I'm sharing to just share, to speak more about the shadows of that space, more than the beautiful things. Obviously, healing starts happening in ceremony, I would say. It starts happening in ceremony, and then it happens really afterwards. And the rest was living fully in that world, between being there for everyone on the retreat to going through everything that was happening in the background. And I would like to highlight that today, or tonight, I would say, or this morning.
So here we go. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 6 of Ouroboros Story Hour, True Tales of Healing in Altered States. I'm your host and producer, Bob Cohen. I'm a dad, writer, teacher, and bluesman. Ouroboros Story Hour began in Boston in August of 2017 as a regional underground psychedelic storytelling session. We've evolved into an international multimedia story platform that explores the nooks and crannies of the human condition through the lens of non-ordinary reality. Our mission is to promote deep healing and radical acceptance of ourselves and others by sharing and witnessing people's stories. So a few reminders before we start. We practice unscripted long-form storytelling, and therefore we invite you to take a few deep breaths before we begin. Let go of the everyday pace of life and listen with patience and an open heart. Ouroboros Story Hour is for educational purposes and a substance-free event. We do not advocate the use of illegal substances, nor do we provide opportunities for people to obtain them. We are committed to delivering all Ouroboros Story Hour content free of charge during the pandemic, but we need support to pay for project expenses. You can support Ouroboros Story Hour by subscribing to our YouTube channel, becoming a patron at patreon.com/storyhour, or by donating $1 to $10 in lieu of a ticket to my Venmo at, and this is all one word, no spaces, at Bob J. Cohen, or my PayPal. This is again all one word, no spaces, paypal.me/Bob J. Cohen. If you're joining us via Facebook Live, please say hi and in the comment section and let us know where you're from. And of course, we welcome questions. Tonight's featured storytellers were originally Liana Silvey, Maya, Abou, Chedid, Gibby Barnfather, and Richie Ogulnick. So Liana actually just texted me she's not feeling well, and so she's not going to be able to make it tonight. So we'll be going with Maya, Gibby, and Richie, and then me later on. So a quick note about our storytellers. We present people with stories to tell rather than performers. And because this is long form storytelling, we give our speakers the time and space they need to discover their truths. And so kick back, relax, and let the magic unfold. At this point, I usually share a story or talk about something that's come up for me, but a number of our speakers are calling from as many as 7 time zones away, which means they're staying up till the wee hours of the morning to be here with us. So in recognition of that, I want to move that part of the story, that part of the show along. Time permitting, I may tell a story at the end, but right now I want to focus on the storytellers themselves. So up next is Maya Abou Chedid. She is joining us from Lebanon. Maya is a medicine woman, shamanic practitioner, and preparation and integration facilitator. With studies in biological sciences and extensive work in clinical research, Maya was led by Eastern philosophies and practices to learn and use therapeutic modalities and alternative approaches in her life and with others. She spent several years in the Amazon jungle training and learning with tree dietas. Yeah, I'll get that straight. And traditional shamanic ceremonies in which she helped and assisted hundreds in their healing process. Her medicine journey continues since she fully accepted shamanism as her life paths. Maya offers shamanic ceremonies, private and group, on a regular basis, as well as guiding preparation and integration sessions where she combines all the modalities that became an integral part of her way of life. So Maya plans to talk about her experiences as a medicine woman, shamanic practitioner, and preparation and integration facilitator. So Maya, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Bob. Hello, everyone. Gibby, good to see you. Such a great surprise. I know. Divine timing, right? So Yes, I would like to share today, for the first time, I would say, a, a big chunk of the story that I've lived in my training in the Amazon. I was born in Lebanon and I was raised in Lebanon. And the Amazon is quite a far place from here. But when I decided to go there, it was a big transition in my life. It was really a transition from stepping out of the scientific field, the clinical research field, the pharmaceutical collaboration and monitoring and auditing doctors for specific protocols, and making sure that patient safety is of high priority, to moving further in expanding my seeking back then, from yoga and yoga therapy and therapeutic Thai body work into further, I would say, undefined territories. Plant medicine for me was completely new. I had no previous experience with any, I would say, might expansive plants, probably, except maybe few encounters here and there when it comes to the sacred herb of the Middle East. And otherwise, I went with very little, I would say, research. There wasn't much stuff that I would say explored in terms of literature or in terms of documentaries before I went. And yes, the first experience, I would say, defined the next 9 to 10 years of my journey, of my life altogether. It was a retreat made out of 5 ceremonies, 3 ceremonies back to back, and then there was 1 day off, and then another 2 ceremonies. And the plant medicine was the plant medicine of the Amazon that is very well known as ayahuasca. And the brew was a very specific brew connected to the mestizo, I would say, school of shamanism, if there's anything that can be defined like that, but lineage. So it's different than the Shipibo style. It's not only the vine and the chakruna, it's also tree barks. And since my first retreat, I actually started dieting. I had no idea what diets were. Obviously, I had put myself all for it because this is how I used to do things. And that was the big, I would say, lesson in my journey. So since that, this was in 2011, I know that many relate, but this is where really I found what I was looking for. I wouldn't say not in terms of plant medicine, but in terms of service, in terms of seeing the unconditional way of serving, and the unconditional nourishing that can happen in such a space that I did not really find in other spaces. I would say more in defined locations, as you know, in yoga places or in other locations, which were wonderful as well, between, you know, India, Thailand, Nepal. But what I felt was something that was completely new for me, and it was what I was really looking for in terms of feeling life again. And so I carried through that journey somehow. Every year I was going for a retreat or two, including dieting. Um, and then in 2015, I stepped into training. I didn't know that I was stepping into training, but that was what was happening. And I knew later on that I was actually apprenticing in a formal way. My experience was altogether very special. I would say under the healing theme, but also under the trauma theme. The healing in terms of personal healing, and also witnessing other people's healing process. And in terms of trauma, I would say this was how I delved very deep into my own history in trauma, and I would say the country's history in trauma. And so that extended a bit further into seeing what was happening in the background of a retreat center. And this was, I would say, the big abyss. Knowing that I was working with people that are foreigners. We had back then local maestros, but the rest of the team was foreigners because most of the guests were foreigners. The more I was delving into my training, the more I was seeing that there was something wrong. I could not put my finger on it because there was a lot happening in terms of retreats back to back. You know, we're talking about 30 to 40 people per retreat, 5 ceremonies per week. And there would be 2-3 days off between one retreat and another. So you can only imagine drinking ayahuasca almost every single day for months during the year. And the rest, I would say there was maybe 1 up to 3 months. They were kind of divided somehow during the year where there would be a pause and some time off. And during that time, I was barely in touch with life. So my only connection with life was the fact that I knew that I had a family in Lebanon. And the rest was living fully in that world, between being there for everyone on the retreat to going through everything that was happening in the background. And I would like to highlight that today, or tonight, I would say, or this morning. This is the major part that I would say took me into a major trauma. And yes, I am aware that everything happens because of divine happening, approaching, attracting. And yes, I am aware that what I have manifested is something that was beyond my imagination. So what I would like to highlight in this world of plant medicine is based on an experiences that I've lived actually, which are based in a presentation of things in terms of healing, in terms of support, in terms of we are there for you, in terms of everything. And in the backstage, there would be no no care whatsoever. And we're talking about no care in the foundation of a retreat center. I'm not talking about no care in the team that was currently available when I was there. And so the split was in what is going on in the energetic field of the space of the ceremony, and what is being reflected when people are giving some insights about, we're feeling some separation here in the space. And also what is going on after ceremonies end, when pain starts surfacing. And so this was building up over years. And I had put myself in a position where I was apprenticing with a guide who was also a foreigner, and I had a partner who was also a foreigner. And the partner was also apprenticing. In this field, it's usually not advised to have a partner, especially in the Amazonian shamanism. But I wanted to have a life also. I wanted to be in a couple, get married, have a family, and work with the medicine. And so this whole scheme put me in a position where I was confused, lost, and drained. And probably the only way for me to keep going was people. I would see people healing. I would see people getting better. And I would, cry sometimes with them, because this was also touching me. It was always reminding me that there is hope, there is something that will clear out. Eventually, there's a lot of layers to this story, but eventually there was a whole scheme played out by some people in the foundation of that retreat center. And eventually it was all a presentation of manipulation and lies, which had presented also a resignation letter in front of me one day with a written text and a request, I would say a push for me to sign it. Back then I was done. There was a lot of pain already in my body. I could not explain what was going on to people. And I could not explain anything to anybody, even friends in Lebanon. I took distance because I was in a world that was getting darker and darker. And I did not know why. And I was convinced, I believed that this was the best center in the world. It was all a big lesson, for sure. And it took me into an almost death experience, where in that process, the guide that was my, I would say, teacher, shamanic teacher in that place, committed suicide. That story was not spoken about. And there was all kinds of covering it up with other layers of untruth and more manipulation and more, I would say, abuse. It was all based on abuse, actually. This is how it all played out energetically in the space and also psychically. So in the diets that I did after I left that place, I worked with angels, I would say, that helped me straighten my previous diets. We call it straightening because diets get twisted. They get twisted based on many twisted energies, including the twisted energies within us. So we call upon them, and either they get amplified because of everything that is going on, or they get refined or straightened within us. The straightening is in relationship with things. So those people helped me to clear out what I needed to clear out. And I know that many people probably have been through something like this, but not many share, I would say, what's going on really in that world. And I'm not approaching this from the place of a victim. I'm not approaching this from a place that this is what happened with me. I did that on my own. And I processed that on my own. And I know that I had a part in this. I can't remove myself from it. And it had to happen in this way and in this intensity. So after that elder committed suicide, there was no talking about it except in very secretive ways. And there was almost threatenings. You know, even my resignation letter that was actually proved to be a fraudulent letter by the Peruvian government, a Peruvian lawyer, in which I was asked not to speak about that center on social media or whatever, but or not to say its name. And so it doesn't matter. It does not matter the name of the center. What matters is everything else, everything that happens in that world when it comes to approaching plant medicine, working with plant medicine, and being with people that are truly building connections that are based on clarity, that are based on transparency, that are based on respect to each other, and respect to women, I would say, as much as respect to men. What I also lived is in a world that was known to be a machismo world, in a world that was known to be a man's world. And it was such a struggle to stay gentle. You know, I had to break myself apart in order to belong. And again, this was an extension of my own childhood. So it was just divinely woven into everything. And till now, it keeps teaching me. And the world of plant medicine keeps teaching me also in my connection with the trees. But that story, somehow, I felt like starting to share it after 2 years and something. 2 years and 5 months, actually. And I'm writing about it as well. I'm doing some writing, I would say, in as much objective way as possible, because my intention is not to attack anybody. I would be playing the same game, and that's not my game. So I'm not interested in getting my identity back from those people, because somehow what happened is that after I left, being part of the team that worked, I would say, pretty hard, 16 to 18 hours a day, barely sleeping, barely eating, not because there was no food, but because there was no appetite, and putting oneself in such a condition. Yes, it is a choice. in that world, we dive fully in, especially when we know that it's a call that is coming really from this depth. And usually the training is about this dismemberment and loss and confusion and losing faith and losing connection with the medicine until the medicine trees, until the medicine spirits come back. And so this is a foundational concept in shamanism. So that world um, presented is presented in a way, and what is happening in the back scene is a different thing. And it's like everything in life, and how much we can relate, especially to these times, in terms of being truly honest. I mean, nothing to hide, nothing. When we're working with people, I could not remove myself from what was happening with someone who was highly addicted or highly abused, because I was also a human being, other than working in that field and learning and training. And that was always my call for my guide. I used to speak with him and tell him, I need to stay connected to my humanness. And this was the big struggle during that time, due to the amounts of ceremonies. And so I'm sharing to just share, to speak more about the shadows of that space, more than the beautiful things. Obviously, healing starts happening in ceremony, I would say. It starts happening in ceremony. But, as an extension to, I would say a week ago, there was the day of the Thank You Plant Medicine Day. And we had some sharing circles also on the 21st. And as an extension to that, to highlighting this is important. I know some people speak about it. Some organizations are addressing it. And it's not about being uptight. It's about being respectful. Because even if we apprentice or we learn because of a call and a potency in that world, in terms of this extent of potential of universal connection, we need to stay aware that this is really not our world, and practicing shamanism in our own areas, in our own lands, in our own countries, is the way to connect to the medicine of that too. And this is, I think, where there has been a lot of distortion in terms of power and using power and owning things, traditions altogether. So in my sharing today, I would like to also offer gratitude to all the lies, all the manipulations, everything that happened in a very intentional way, to remove people in my life, including myself, from a healing center that I gave my whole being to, because I believed in and I trusted. And so, yes, this is I would say the continuation of this journey. And I hope that this sharing can bring a bit more light on what is going on, and not only from the perspective of the Western, as in, I would say, the US and Europe, but also other parts of the world in connection with traditional plant medicine all over the world. And yes, thank you for listening. And I'm looking forward to hearing everyone else's story as well.
Well, thank you so much. If you're just tuning in, welcome to Season 4, Episode 6 of Ouroboros Story Hour, True Tales of Healing in Altered States. I'm your host, Bob Cohen. With us tonight are Maya, Abou, Chedid, Gibby Barnfather, and Richie Ogulnick. We're committed to sharing Ouroboros Story Hour free of charge during the pandemic, but we need to raise funds to pay for project expenses. If your finances permit, please support the project by subscribing to our YouTube channel, becoming a patron at patreon.com/storyhour, or donating from $1 to $10 in lieu of the ticket to my Venmo at Bob J. Cohen, or to PayPal at paypal.me/Bob J. Cohen. If tonight's speakers have inspired you to share your own story, we interview prospective speakers on a rolling basis. Contact me on Facebook and Instagram at Ouroboros Story Hour, or by email at ouroborosstoryhour@gmail.com. If you are just joining us by Facebook Live, say hi in the comment section, let us know where you're from, and of course, please feel free to ask questions. Up next is Gibby Barnfather. Gibby lives in Bristol, England. He's in transition from the old world, where he worked in advertising and print for others and as a small business owner, to a more holistic income from writing and running plant medicine retreats, whilst exploring other new, more aligned ways to make money in abundance. He recently finished a trilogy of epic adventure books called Bodhi and the Magic Vine, a Zen guide into the entire cosmos and beyond the underworld. His plant medicine retreats are another way he reaches out to a wider audience to help others to wake up and to see their connection with each other, with Mother Earth, and the realm of spirit. Of tonight's story, Gibby says, "The mother plant is keeping me busy. I'm excited to share my journey with you on Ouroboros Story Hour." So without any further ado, I'm going to turn the screen and the microphone and the center of attention onto Gibby, and I'm going to disappear. Gibby, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for staying up so late. I really appreciate it. It's what I like to call stupid o'clock in the morning in England right now. And typically when I'm up that late, I used to be getting in trouble. So at least you're not getting in trouble, right? Yeah. All right, Gibby, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
We're in lockdown. I can't go anywhere anyway, so no better place to be. Thanks for inviting us on, Bob. Maya, thanks for your sharing. I can't believe you're here. I put out a message on the Thank You Plant Medicine group a few weeks back, and Maya replied, and we had a telephone conversation. So we kind of met, but it's beautiful to see your face. So we'd had a chat on the phone, and it's the synchronicities and divine way the universe works is never ceases to amaze me. So it's lovely that you're here. So yeah, my story, I was going to try and sort of give myself a bit of a template to work with, but in the spirit of, I think Bob likes us just to go with the flow. So I'll start at the beginning and see where we go. I think that my plant medicine journey started a couple of years before I actually drank ayahuasca. I'd become more interested in spirituality and was becoming more aware of plant medicine, and she was finding me, as I think is the case most of the time, that they kind of seek you. Well, when you're seeking something, it seeks you. So it wasn't like something that just arrived and was on a whim, or something that happened out of the blue. It was something that I was looking to do, and I was thinking that maybe sometime I'd fly to the Amazon and raise the funds to do that and get the time. I'd recently started my daughter's 7 now, so I've been drinking ayahuasca for 5 years. So she was already born, and I was thinking, will I get the time to get away from the family and go to the Amazon. And then a friend of mine, he was sat on a plane that was flying to Poland, and there was a couple of people in front of him that were going to an ayahuasca ceremony, which sort of brought to my attention that I might not have to go so far to experience the mother plant. Looked into it and found out that there was indeed many places I could drink it a lot closer to home. So I went to Holland, which at the time it was legal to drink ayahuasca there. I went to a place called the Sacred Voyage, and I would recommend that. Lovely people, beautiful experience. I was kind of going as a psychonaut, as a astral traveler, I thought I'd had a pretty good life and hadn't really experienced any trauma and never really had any problems, so wasn't really going for any healing. So I thought she had other ideas. She laid me down and was like, well, you've had some trauma, you've had some bad experiences, and I'd stored up some emotions. So we did a bit of internal work, and it was the only way I can explain it. It was like a medieval battering ram, battering on a big wooden door, and she knocked that door through, and the emotion just poured out of me. I've never cried so much, and it was beautiful. A guide, Renee at the Sacred Voyage, was just holding me, and I cried. I don't know for how long. About what, I wasn't sure. There was no real face to the trauma. It was just a build-up, I think, of emotion, a build-up of maybe small bits of trauma and bad experiences that you think you deal with, but unfortunately we store it up and we carry it around, and she helped me release it. So I think I spent probably about the first 4 hours of the ceremony doing internal work, and then all of a sudden I wanted to go outside, and there was a big curtain draped down, and it was blowing into the room. The door was open and the sun was shining, and I was just drawn to go outside, and I asked one of the guides to come and help me. My legs weren't working too well, so they helped me up, and I stepped outside, and I remember the guide said to me, you've worked hard to get here. Well done. Welcome to nature. And I just looked at a new world. It was the same world I'd left 4 hours before, but it was alive. Everything was interconnected. Everything was alive. Everything was breathing. The grass, the trees, everything had an energy, the same energy as me. It was just the most wonderful experience, and spent the rest of the ceremony outside. And went to a few ceremonies after that. And experienced the medicine, and still did some work on myself, but it became apparent that I whatever healing I needed to heal, I'd healed, and she had other ideas for me. She was kind of I'd say certainly after the second retreat I went to, the third one I drank, and it was a very different experience. She was just offering me wisdom and insight, and kind of saying, you're fit for service, you're ready to serve others and help others. And my experience was very different whenever I drank the medicine. It was kind of preparing me, I think as Maya said, it's training. You don't realize it is at the time, but it was preparing me to be able to walk on the other side and help others along this journey, and help others to heal themselves. To hold space and provide a loving vessel, container for the magic to work. And as Maya said as well, it's not me when I run my retreats. It's not me that heals people. It's the medicine, but the space is very important, and it's one of the things that I've learned drinking in various different retreats, the things that do and don't work, and the space is important. The integration is important. The most important thing, as hard as it can be during a ceremony, the hard work starts when you leave the retreat. And I think so many people think that ayahuasca is a magic wand and they're just going to turn up and drink it and they're healed. But these people keep going back and drinking more and more, and they go to every available retreat and nothing's happening. And the reason why nothing's happening is they're not doing the work. They're not acting upon the insight. They're not leaving the retreat and making changes. And that's what we try and do with my retreats, is to help people with that integration and be an anchor and support and help them. You know, I don't want people to come back. I'm not building a business. I don't want people to keep coming back drinking with me. I'd love them to drink once and never see them again. But I'm rushing ahead a bit there by getting into the retreats, because the first time I drank that time in the Sacred Voyage in Holland, I think we've mentioned it before about intention. Intention is more powerful than action, and whatever intention you put behind anything, it empowers that experience. And obviously, when you go into ceremony and you drink medicine plants, you know, you should have intention and have a list of intentions and prepare yourself beforehand with a daita, and that's about preparing your mind and your body for the ceremony. But it's not just about consumption in terms of diet. It's media, content, people, places, everything that can affect your energy. But writing down, you know, what, as you said, I think, Bob, be careful what you ask for, because, you know, literally what you ask for you get, and sometimes you've had enough during the ceremony and they're like, no, you had a couple of other things on your list and you're not done, you know, and she'll make sure she works through the whole list. So the first time I drank, because I was only going for a look around, I was like, you know, show me the universe, plug me in. I thought it would be like Neo in the Matrix, where, you know, I just get plugged in and they'd show me the universe. And that's kind of what it did. It threw the whole universe at me. And it was the first sort of 4 or 5 hours of that first ceremony where, well, I didn't want to ever drink again, I don't think. It threw everything at me, and I took it, and I had a lot more respect for the medicine and for creation afterwards. But it also had respect for me, I think. I think it kind of thought, fuck, I threw everything at you and you're still all right. Do you know what I mean? And so the next time I drank, I made a clear list of things that I wanted to work through, and did so. So, you know, that first experience was powerful in that, you know, I hadn't asked for anything in particular, and just saying throw the universe at me was a big thing to try and understand and take. But she gave me a few responsibilities during that first ceremony, and one of them was, she said that I was a writer and that I should write a book, and it was important for me to help take the message to the world, and that it should be a children's book, so a children's book about DMT. Should be quite interesting. I'm self-publishing the first part this year. I'm not too sure that many publishers would take it on, although, you know, it's not mentioned. Ayahuasca is not mentioned. He drinks a brew. The character drinks a brew in it and goes into other dimensions and altered states. The only way I can, it's a basic philosophy book. It's full of myth and legend and insight, and so much that I've learned from the plants and from Eastern philosophy, all poured in, and the reader can't help but go on a journey. It basically describes my own journey. People will think it's a book of fiction. It's not. Everything that happens in it is real. It happened to me or somebody else at one of the retreats I've been on, in an altered state in another dimension on the astral plane. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. The only way I could describe it, I don't know whether people remember the TV series Monkey. It's like Monkey fell down Alice in Wonderland's rabbit hole into like an upside down Tolkien-esque world of trippiness, man. It's awesome. And as I say, it's kind of inspired by something that I probably read when I was backpacking 25 years ago, something like the Celestine Prophecy, where, you know, it's a basic philosophy book where people can read it, and it increases their awareness. It pricks something in their psyche or their consciousness, and because you've read it, like when I read the Celestine Prophecy, I started thinking it. I've met everyone I meet, I've met for a reason. Everything that happens for a reason. You start looking for the meaning in things rather than just existing on one level of existence. So it's kind of you know, I've top my cap to that, and try to replicate that for kids from 8 to 108 really. Adults will be able to read it. I haven't dumbed it down for children in any way. I've just built an epic adventure story around so much knowledge and wisdom that I think is important, as the mother plant had said to me, if we can get plant medicine into the mainstream and get it more widely accepted and to reduce the stigma, then, you know, that's all that we could do, that anyone could do. So, you know, it was an honor and a privilege. She did say that she asked people to do a lot of things, and if you're not ready to do it, then, you know, there's nothing to be ashamed of. And, you know, but, you know, I didn't think I was a writer, but I've been writing it now for 4 years. And if you do something every day, it's like a Zen art. I think I've become a master at it. I enjoy it. It's the first time in my life that I enjoy what I do. I do more writing on the book than I do of my business now, and that's kind of why I said I'm in transition, because the less I do of the old world, the financial income, the position gets tight, as I'm still not yet making money from the book, or my retreats are not really about money. So it's different. The transition is hard, because the thing I love to do, I found my life's purpose, which is to write, and I want to do that, and that's all I want to do. So I end up doing that more and more, and working less, which is, as I say, it's not good for the bank balance at the moment. But the creative process of writing the book has been amazing for me. It's really helped me cement the knowledge and wisdom that the plants have given me. And I don't just work with ayahuasca, I run mushroom retreats and take mushrooms in ceremony too. So these plants have really helped me. And then along my journey, I've then written a story and a plot around my journey, which enables me to bring in that knowledge, that wisdom, that insight. But in also doing the creative process has allowed me to understand it more, cement it, integrate it, which I can only recommend that people do when they do plant medicine, is try and be creative afterwards. Because for me, some of the messages and insight was only understood a few months later, when I was trying to put it into a creative process and trying to write it down in the book and put it into a plot. And it was like, I kind of thought I understood the vision at the time, but it's 4 months later, had I not been working on the book, and the penny drops that the message was something totally different. That creative process has given me so much. But also in writing about the experience, it's allowed me to understand and see the synchronicities and the signs and the way the flow works and the way the universe works. Because in the book, I'm trying to show the reader that there's another level to existence. So, you know, and that it's there to support you and it wants to help you. And the more aligned you are to your true purpose, the more it helps you. And with the book, with me becoming more aligned to my true purpose and finding my happiness, it helps me. I see the universe helping me with the book. It sent me the illustrators I need. It sent me the editor I need. It sends me the information, the inspiration. It sends me all the forms of abundance I need, exactly when I need it, exactly what I need when I need it to do what I need to do. And it's even just that process of seeing the universe support me do my book. And then I'm trying to put that into the book to help other people see that that's how the universe works. That's, you know, the more aligned you are, the more you see the synchronicities, and the more you see the signs, and the more support you get, and the more, as I say, it's not always money that gets sent to you in abundance. It could be, you know, ideas, inspiration. It can be information. I mean, I'll be working on certain parts of the book, and someone will give me a book which has got information that I need, that it's just at the right time, that I can then add and create depth on the creative process that I'm working on at that time. As I say, it sent me all the right people that I need to work on it. It's such a blessing, but it's so wonderful to see the universe, you know, actually helping me and supporting me on this project. So I know what I'm doing with the book. It's a tool. It's a basic philosophy tool for someone to read and to see irrespective of whether they take plant medicine or not, that there is a way to work with the universe, a way to find alignment, a way to find your follow your highest excitement, to find your true happiness. And when you're working with enthusiasm and inspiration on something, then the universe is actually there to support you. And it does. and it will send you everything you need exactly when you need it to do what you need to do. And it's a beautiful thing. And I think so many of us are unfortunately out of alignment with perhaps what we should be doing, and miss the synchronicities, and then obviously are missing the flow. They're not in the flow. So it's important that I get this message out there. As I say, it should be interesting to see how it's received. A kid's book about DMT. But I was going to share some of the illustrations, but it doesn't matter. It's incredible. The artwork's brilliant. As I say, my writing, I've gone from, I wasn't a writer to actually being a writer, and so it hasn't been published yet. But I've been working on it every day for the last 3 years, and it's fantastic. So I'm excited to get that out. But obviously, I think the other thing I said that I now also run plant medicine retreats, ayahuasca and mushroom retreats. So it's just a way for me to find a wider audience, to share what I've learned, to help and guide others. And that's kind of been my journey, has been a blessed one to have experienced the medicine, and then for it to have shown me I'm a writer and a healer, something that I wouldn't have known had I not experienced the medicine. I would still probably be living in the old world and I wasn't miserable, I wasn't unhappy, but I certainly wasn't aligned. And I wasn't getting the joy and pleasure that I get now from stepping out of the matrix. So I drank 5 years ago. I think I was already exiting the matrix somewhat, but I can safely say that I've barely got a foot left in it, which unfortunately I have to. I've got a mortgage and a family to look after, so I still have to kind of run a business and pay the bills. But hopefully coming to a bookshelf near you soon will be an incredible book about plant medicine for the world to enjoy. And as I say, it's an important one, I think, that the world needs. It's out there, what it can do, and that I believe it can save humanity, because at the moment I think we're heading in the wrong direction. So in the grand scheme of things, as far as the universe is concerned, whether humans carry on or not doesn't really matter. It does to us, obviously, when we can change our path. And that's kind of what my book's about. Well, the trilogy, I kept writing so much, it got so big I had to split it in 3. But that's kind of what I want to do. I want to take that message to the world and inspire a planetary awakening. That's my story, Bob.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the story. I appreciate you staying awake and staying with us. If you're just tuning in, welcome to Season 4, Episode 6 of Ouroboros Story Hour, True Tales of Healing in Altered States. I'm your host, Bob Cohen. With us tonight are Maya, Abou, and Chedid, Gibby Barnfather, from whom you have just heard, and Richie Ogulnick, who's coming up next. We are, speaking of the money form of abundance, we're committed to sharing Ouroboros Story Hour free of charge during the pandemic, but we need to raise funds to pay for project expenses. If your finances permit, please support Ouroboros Story Hour by subscribing to our YouTube channel, becoming a patron at patreon.com/storyhour, or donating from $1 to $10 in lieu of a ticket to my Venmo at Bob J. Cohen, or to PayPal at paypal.me/Bob J. Cohen. If tonight's speakers have inspired you to share your own story, we interview prospective speakers on a rolling basis. Contact me on Facebook and Instagram, this all together at the @ Ouroboros Story Hour, or by email at ouroborosstoryhour@gmail.com. If you are joining us live from Facebook, say hi in the comment section and let us know where you're from. And of course, feel free to ask questions. And in poking through the live feed, we have folks from all around the U.S. anyway. So up next is Richie Ogulnick, who is joining us from Gainesville, Florida. Richie grew up in a middle-class, non-religious environment during the 60s, and it turns out we're both from the Bronx, only we probably lived there at slightly different times. Early in his life, he went searching for a right livelihood, i.e. something to do that has an end, that as an end in itself, not as a means to an end. So when he learned about ibogaine, which is an alkaloid extracted from a West Central African shrub, which upon ingestion places a person in a pre-addicted state within 36 hours without going through the agony of the symptoms of withdrawal, he was utterly stricken. So Richie plans to talk about his experiences as an ibogaine provider. I'm really excited to hear about, to hear what Richie has to share, because his experiences with ibogaine go back to go back quite a ways and connect with Richie, you'll remind me of the guy's name again from New York. I lost my notes on that one, but it's just, I think it's fair to say that Richie's OG, as the kids would say, original gangsta, with ibogaine, and I think it's going to be kind of really fun to hear what he has to share.
Hi, thank you for inviting me, Bob. I'll carry on with my story. It's hard to know exactly where to begin, but I think I'll begin Thanksgiving week of 1989. And although when I tell this story to people, they're confused as to why I'm bringing this particular experience up. So maybe this time around, I'll kind of make a more integral connection between one experience and the story. So what happened was Thanksgiving week of 1989, I had turned 40 a few months before, and I had just separated from my daughter's mom, and I was making jewelry for about 18, 19 years. And although it was something that I liked, it wasn't right livelihood. It didn't, I wasn't passionate about it. It was a sweet and simple way to bring up a family, but it wasn't something that I would do as an end in itself. And what I tended to do in my life was to surround myself with people that, irrespective of whether they made money at what they were doing or not, they had to do it, whether it was being a therapist or an acupuncturist or a dancer. It was like their passion. And I liked what I did, but it wasn't that. And so I was really longing to meet up with something that I can really sink my teeth into. And one day, a couple of days before Thanksgiving, Monday or Tuesday, 1989, I was sitting in a sitting up meditation, and literally within seconds, there were these two beings on both sides of me, and they were like kind of bypassing me, looking at each other and having the best time. They were just laughing and laughing, and I kind of felt like that they knew something that I didn't know. So I then, the next day or a day after, received a call from an old friend of mine who I met on the streets of New York while I was selling my rings and he was selling his wife's earrings. He called me and he said, "Did you ever hear about ibogaine?" And he explained to me how he heard from a couple of physician friends of his who were on their way down to Washington to see if they can burn through the bureaucracy and fast track ibogaine to become legal, because it literally brought a person to a pre-addictive state just a day or two after they ingested ibogaine, which is an alkaloid extracted from the West African shrub by the name of Tabernathi iboga. And my hairs stood up on end. I was very intrigued. I immediately walked to the herbarium library at the University of Florida in Gainesville and came upon page readout about a little corporation located on Staten Island, run by a person by the name of Howard Lotsoff. And this was about Ibogaine. And so I called Howard, and he sent me, it was before computers, and he sent me a bunch of testimonials from people's experiences and other things, articles, one article from the Village Voice from way back then. And I immediately was dumbfounded when I read the testimonials from hardcore heroin addicts that were being thrown into a pre-addictive state without having to go through the pain of withdrawal. And I couldn't understand why this wasn't available in the West. My messianic urge was to fly to Cameroon to pick up, 40,000 doses for 3 cents each. I would go down to southern Cameroon and meet up with the pygmies, and they would look through me and look around me and deem me either as the harborer of Ibogaine or Iboga to the world, or they would just, kick me off their land. And it took me a couple of years to manage to gather the few $1,000s and the mosquito net and the sleeping bag and the courage to go over to Cameroon. And when I arrived, I didn't know where to go or what to do. So I went to a burnt out university where there were panes of glass on the floor, where there seemed to be thousands of kids walking around without any books. And I happened to speak with a few professors looking for the organic chemistry department store. And they told me they hadn't been paid for a few months. And so I knock on a door that I thought would be appropriate to knock on, because I thought, well, maybe someone there spoke English, because they only spoke, native languages and French in southern Cameroon. So the guy, well, first they answered the door, and there was a couple of guys playing cards, and I asked them, do you know anything about Ibogaine? And they said, come back tomorrow. I think there'll be somebody that can help you. So I went back the next day, and this 6'5", 300-pound guy says, where are you from? The Bronx? He said, God will strike me down if I don't work with you. I'm the only chemist on the continent of Africa that has spent the last year and a half perfecting the extraction process to extract Ibogaine from Tabernacle Iboga. And he practically lifts me, which was pretty easy for him to do, to an old 150-year-old wooden chest, and he takes out a vial of white powder, which says Ibogaine hydrochloride, 13 grams. And we talked, and we were both very excited. And I said, can I have it? I want to bring it back and start doing treatments and sessions with people. And he said, well, I'll charge you. And it was a little over $1,000 a gram. I said, fine, but I only have a few $1,000s. He said, that's okay. You'll come back and you'll owe me the 9,000 and you'll come back. And I actually did 6 times over a period of a couple of years, until one day I received a little crunched up envelope with no return address on it. And in the envelope was this cut out little corner of a piece of paper, which had a number on it, 0044, blah, 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 an English, UK number. And I called it, and it was representatives of a little family operation pharmaceutical located in Italy. And I ended up receiving the Iboga from then on at 1/10 the amount that it initially cost me during the first couple of years. But in any case, it was really extraordinary, and it was really beautiful. And you know, I came back, and on the plane, I realized what I was going to do when I got back to this to the West. And so I realized I needed to create a pseudonym. So I conjured up a memory of a couple of old friends from grade school, and I used one person's last name and another person's first name, and I combined them to create a pseudonym by the name of Eric Taub, which I've used in the Ibogaine, the Iboga world, for the last 27 years. During those first few months, the day that I came back from Africa was literally the day, and nobody knew that I was coming back with Ibogaine in the heel of my shoe, except a good friend of mine and my sister, and maybe another friend or something, I don't remember. But the day that I came back was the day that a client of a therapist friend of mine dropped this chapter in her lap called Ibogaine, Fantasy and Reality, which was a documentation of about 40 or 50 lower to mid-range dose directive therapeutic sessions by the Chilean therapist by the name of Claudio Naranjo, back in the 60s and the 70s. And that information gave me and some people here in Gainesville the information that we needed to begin exploring and creating the protocols to do the psychospiritual and the psychotherapeutic sessions, very different from the addiction interruption treatments, which, you know, overwhelm the symptom of withdrawal and eliminate craving for substances from crack cocaine, methamphetamine to opioids. So during the time that I was home, I spent the first probably 3 months in it. Back then in the early 90s, it cost me about $1,000 a month for my AT&T phone bills, because I was calling anyone and everyone about 12 hours a day, you know, 5-6 days a week, just telling people what I had. And then we published an article in Magical Blend magazine back in the mid 90s. And then people began to write me and were interested in coming for a psychospiritual or therapeutic session from as far away as Australia and Europe, because nobody had this medicine available yet in the West. And so during those years, spent a lot of time introducing and then also training a couple of doctors and paraclinicians, but mostly ex-addicts, how to do sessions, how to facilitate. And some of those people opened up centers in Costa Rica and in Mexico and in other places in the world. So I ended up conducting about 750 of these sessions and treatments underground over a period of 15 and a half years, which is already 12 years ago. And then I have been on the phone. But my initial intention, I don't know when I started, but I'd like to get this in, because what I really wanted to see happen when I initially went to Africa was I wanted to reach 1 million people with a medicine that people can do at home safely, legally, inexpensively. I was very stubborn to admit to myself for years that it wasn't going to be Iboga, that Iboga requires supervision. It tends to be on the expensive side, certainly compared to other medicines. It can't be done, you know, at home usually, and so on. And so I was very reticent to admit to myself that that was the case, that in the last maybe 20, 25 years, we might have reached 20 to 23,000 people in total. And that brought me to go to Vietnam, to go to an area in Vietnam. I'd like to know how much time I have. I'm sorry if I'm.
I told you, just have fun. Keep on going.
Okay. So I went to Vietnam after I finally became more open to something that could help people besides iboga for addiction interruption. And so I went to Vietnam, where I was invited by some doctors because they heard about the work that I was doing with iboga. And they live in an area where invariably, anywhere in the world where there's opium growing, there are families that are all addicted, and it's not a negative stigma that they're addicted. This is what they've been doing for hundreds and hundreds of generations, cultivating opium. And what they do in these family units is that they allow the elderly people to remain addicted in between seasons when there's a shortage of opium. And the younger people have to go through the agony of the symptoms of withdrawal because there's not enough opium to keep them going as well. So what happens, and what's been happening for generations and generations, is that there are medicine women and men that go into the local province rainforests or forests, and they find plant medicines, plants that have active ingredients, alkaloids in them, which ameliorate the symptoms of withdrawal. And then about 50 years ago, there was one guy that not only did that, but he went from province to province to province where they grew opium. And he utilized the most active ingredients, the most active alkaloids from each of the provinces, and created a 13 herbal composition that they called hientos. And so I was introduced to hientos, and I brought it back to the West. But when I did, I realized very soon that it was going to be unbearable to work with the communist government of Vietnam. It's going to be really hard. And they were charging a lot for the hientos. So I teamed up with an acupuncturist who's been teaching Chinese traditional medicine for 35 years. And we created a combination of 17 different Western and Chinese herbs that significantly decreases the tolerance to opioids, but also reduces anxiety and promotes sleep, and it has all these nourishing, wonderful. People feel more self-reflective when they take the remedy, and that was really my goal initially when I went to Africa to find iboga. It was that I could find something inexpensive and, something that people can do at home with no need for an EKG or professional care, something that they can empower themselves to work with instead of having a methadone clinic or a Suboxone doctor looking over their shoulder. And so there's lots of stories around that, but basically, it became very efficacious, and I shared it with about 230 people until the FDA shut me down because they deemed it as a drug that didn't go through the millions and millions of dollars in double-blind studies. So hopefully teaming up with a couple of people that have the marketing ability to market it in such a way so that it doesn't raise the eyebrows that I raised by just telling the truth as to what it does. Kind of a tangential story, but I think I'll stop at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Richie. I really appreciate you joining us. So, one of the most amazing things about this project, I've been doing it. This is my 4th season doing it, and this happens all the time. I'll have someone who commits to doing the show, and then they touch base with me at the very last minute, and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't." And every single time, someone turns up on the 11th hour and 59th second to offer to share. And so my friend Haya is on the call here someplace, and if she hasn't fallen asleep because she's in France, there she is, has offered to step into the breach. So I love you for doing this, Haya. Thank you. Let me just do the sort of the interlude text, and then we'll get you properly introduced, and we'll kind of go from there. So going back to let me flip this up here. So if you're just tuning in, welcome to season 4, episode 6 of Ouroboros Story Hour, True Tales of Healing in Altered States. I'm your host, Bob Cohen. With us tonight are Maya, Abou, Chedid, Gibby Barnfather, and Richie Ogulnick, and my friend Haya Al-Hejailan. She just popped in and is saving our bacon, getting that fourth storyteller in. So we're committed to sharing Ouroboros Story Hour free of charge during the pandemic, but we do need to raise funds to pay for project expenses. If your finances permit, please support Ouroboros Story Hour by subscribing to our YouTube channel, becoming a patron at patreon.com/storyhour, or donating from $1 to $10 in lieu of a ticket to my Venmo at Bob J. Cohen, all one word, or to PayPal at paypal.me/Bob J. Cohen. If tonight's speakers have inspired you to share your own story, we interview prospective speakers on a rolling basis. Contact me on Facebook and Instagram at Ouroboros Story Hour with all those S's, or by email at Ouroboros Story Hour with all those S's at gmail.com. If you're joining us via Facebook Live, say hi in the comment section and let us know where you're from. And of course, feel free to ask questions. So as it happens, Haya contributed last month, actually. So I have in my notes from last time around, I've got her bio. So I'm going to make sure that I read that. Where'd that go? Oh, wrong. I pulled up the wrong one. Actually, you know what? Let's just have fun and let's just wing it. Haya, you can tell everybody about who you are and what you're all about and what you plan to share. Again, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.
I spoke I think about a month or 2 months ago,
Yep.
and there has been some developments that have happened since, so I'm happy to share about that. Basically, just to give a general overview of what I do, I'm currently finishing up my master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology in London, and I'm doing my dissertation on psychedelic use and COVID stress. So to see if psychedelic use is correlated, or if there's a relationship between psychedelic use and well-being, specifically with how it relates to people's ability to cope with COVID stress. And also beyond that, I'm working on a documentary, which is you can see it when I turn off my video, the Psychedelic Renaissance documentary. And I've been working on it for about 3 years now. And I also am very interested in looking at using psychedelics in treating complex post-traumatic stress disorder and personality disorders, which are very much rooted in trauma. So that's my next step. The next research project I plan on getting involved with. So if anyone is interested in looking at psychedelics to treat personality disorders, BPD specifically, borderline personality disorder, please do reach out. And the story I want to tell is not a personal story. It's a story of someone else who consented to me speaking about their story, and I will leave it anonymous, of course. So recently, I had an experience with a friend. We had an experience of an altered state of consciousness. This is the hint of what it is. It rhymes with MDMA. It's MDMA basically. And yeah, and it was interesting because this friend of mine has a long history of trauma, and they told me that this was the first time that they were ever able to feel a sense of peace and clarity. And from that place, they were actually able to make big life decisions that they were previously unable to make due to fear and due to other conditionings that they were kind of working against. And so this was just it was interesting because as we were in the middle of the experience, I was kind of just looking at them and thinking, oh, well, that's the amygdala that's, less active, and which is responsible for fight or flight fear. It's the part of the brain that is overactive in individuals who have trauma. And it was interesting because I was also, looking at them thinking your prefrontal cortex is now taking the driver's seat, which is why you're able to make rational decisions and you're able to think rationally. So it was really beautiful to see that unfolding in front of me. And a cautionary tale, I made a very poor decision to redose the next day. And I justified it to myself by saying this is independent research, but it was really just poor decision making. And yeah, I mean, your tolerance does build up quite fast, and I mean, yeah, you do have quite a bit of a nasty come down if you're overdoing it. So the moral of the story is just be super responsible, because one dose can be therapeutic, but an additional dose can be quite damaging. So yeah, it was really interesting to see that happening. I'm really interested in basically what my goal is in life, is to make psychedelic therapy accessible in the Middle East. And I think we might have connected sometime in the past, but hello again, and I'll definitely be reaching out to you. So yeah, I mean, it's something that, and as it turns out, psychedelic use has been very prevalent historically in the Middle East. So it's nothing really new. I don't really know too much about the history, but there are quite a bit of historians, and I'm sure Maya knows a bit more than I do. But my dream is to work with other fellow Arabs in the region and other Middle Easterners in establishing a clinic and a research center. We are in grave need for competent therapies that deal with trauma, generational trauma, things like that. And it's super important for us to be working with individuals who are understanding of the culture, which is why I'm really excited to be coming across a lot more Arabs who are interested in this line of work and who have been doing this for a long time and who are doing research. And I've actually recently been contacted by a lot of people from the Middle East, from the Arabic speaking part of the Middle East, who are in their early 20s, undergrad, graduate school, who have been coming to me for advice and for just to learn more about the research and the lay of the land. So I've kind of taken on a bit of a mentor role, which has been super fulfilling. And Maya, I'd love to talk to you at some other time to talk about maybe establishing a collective where we can support other people who are just starting in their career, because this is the kind of support that I really needed when I first started off, and I didn't have. So it's super rewarding for me to be able to provide this to others. So I actually, yeah, so this is the main story I had for tonight. I want to just also caution people in general that psychedelics, I mean, up until my early 20s, I would say I was a bit of a zealot, and I had this idea that psychedelics were like a panacea. But as my prefrontal cortex developed, as I matured, I realized that that's not the case. Psychedelics are a tool, but when you think about it, I mean, it's just like anything else. Like fire is a tool. You can get too close to it and burn yourself. You can, maintain an appropriate distance and get warmth, or use it to cook, or use it to do a lot of things. But or you can, completely step away from it and not benefit from it at all. And it's kind of a similar thing with psychedelics. If you overdo it, you can really harm yourself. And if you don't spend adequate time integrating, you're not really benefiting as much as you could benefit. And also, I mean, there's a researcher, James Rucker, in King's College. He's one of the heads of the research team over there. He's a great guy, great researcher too. And he spoke at Horizons conference, and he said something that really stuck with me, which is, what he said was, what harm are we causing by avoiding risk? So what I mean by that is, people who are really, really scared about exploring psychedelics, or even looking at psychedelics as an option, I push you to ask yourself, what harm are you causing yourself by trying to completely eliminate risk? Because there's no such thing as a risk for your life, right? We're going to be running into risk, but it's about positioning yourself in a way so that the risks are not life-threatening. What that means is, if you're interested in exploring psychedelics for therapeutic purposes, educate yourself. Look at places where you can have legal experiences, where you can have experiences with people who know their stuff, and who will be able to actually support you and hold a container for you. So this is just something that I invite individuals who are skeptical to think about. And as a disclaimer, I do not promote, nor do I discourage psychedelic use. I do promote education, and I advocate for harm reduction. So if any of your loved ones is suffering from a mental health condition or an ailment, please do educate yourself. Do look into what's available, because there is a plethora of studies and examples that show that these medicines can be super powerful. But I do really, really caution you to be wise, and to be careful with how you approach your quest for knowledge and your quest for healing. And this is all from me, Bob. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for joining us. This has been season 4, episode 6 of Ouroboros Story Hour, True Tales of Healing in Altered States. I'm your host, Bob Cohen. I'd like to thank tonight's speakers, Maya, Abou, Chedid, I hope I said that right, Gibby Barnfather, Richie Ogulnick, and my friend Haya Al-Hejailan, who popped in at the end. So we're committed to sharing Ouroboros Story Hour free of charge during the pandemic, but we need to raise funds to pay for project expenses. If your finances permit, please support Ouroboros Story Hour by subscribing to our YouTube channel, becoming a patron at patreon.com/storyhour, or donating $1 to $10 in lieu of a ticket to my Venmo at Bob J. Cohen, or PayPal at paypal.me/Bob J. Cohen. If tonight's speakers have inspired you to share your own story, we interview prospective speakers on a rolling basis. Contact me on Facebook and Instagram at Story Hour, or by email at ouroborosstoryhour@gmail.com. Episode 7 will be airing on March 25th. So I'll say see you then, and good night.